Don in London. Hello, it's November the 13th, Remembrance Day, Sunday, or Remembrance Sunday in the UK, and Veterans Weekend, I guess, in other parts of the world. I don't know what they're all called, but it's a remembrance of times past and people who have fought on behalf of their country and are remembered this weekend. And I've just watched the Remembrance Sunday service from Whitehall on the TV. I was going to go down there and be a part of it. I had a funny turn though. I'm not as well as I used to be, but the good news is I can remember with love my father, who was part of World War II and was impacted by World War I and what happened there, and be reminded of his life and the fact that although he found himself in a very difficult life, he did try and make the best of what he knew how to do. So a lot of love for him, and he's been gone nearly 2 decades. No, 2 decades. So my video is all about recovery and living life in the moment, from being an addict or an alcoholic in active addiction some years back for a long time, to living sober one day at a time. And I have my father to thank for that too, because I feel he was a good teacher when it came to drinking to oblivion to get escape from reality. And I guess even though he struggled, was very successful some of the time, a lot of the time he was disappointed about life and went out early because he drank alcohol alcoholically and never really found recovery until the last few days of his life. And of course he taught me how to drink, and as these videos are about recovery, one of the things we do say in recovery is look back, don't stare, or look back and find what you can cherish and what you can learn from it, and that's what I do. So a lot of love for my dad, even though he's not about now. And he did help me learn how to drink like a man, stand on my own 2 feet, or be the last man standing at the end of a party. And it probably was unhelpful, but helpful these days being sober. So I can look back and understand why. And that's the greatest gift of recovery for me, to know why I am an alcoholic in recovery and how it works to stay in recovery and what works for me. So it wasn't easy, it was a difficult life early on. A land fit for heroes when my father came back? No. A man full of rage, anger, resentment and prejudice about how life was, where he had been, what he had seen, what he had had to do to survive, and then a broken economy, a broken society when he came home. Anyway, good news, he met my mother and they made 3 wonderful children, and we're all still alive, I feel, in one way or another, getting on with life as best we can. And we learned a lot from them. And my mum, a loving, cherishing person, is still about, heading for 80. So I guess she will have watched the service at the Cenotaph in Whitehall, and I shall be in touch with my mum and my sister later, hopefully my brother too. So my video is about recovery, and what makes recovery work for me is learning how to be open, honest and willing to learn life all over again, one day at a time. Learning how to cope with reality without blotting it out or seeking oblivion, and learning how to share about how life can work again. My dad came back with an awful habit of drinking alcohol from the war, and seeking oblivion from those experiences, I guess, was part of what he did. And so did his stepfather, who had shell shock. So down the generations we are impacted by what happens in the world and what happens to us personally and how we deal with it. And often people deal with it by not talking about it, getting isolated and drinking to oblivion because the experiences of life can be so dire and awful and so hard to cope with that oblivion is better than trying to deal with the reality of our situation. So I guess I followed in those footsteps. Cover up, put on a brave face, have a stiff upper lip, never talk about the harshness of life. So if we don't talk about it or share about it, how on earth can we learn how to deal with it on a daily basis? After all, one of the things I've learned is when somebody dies in our lives or somebody leaves us for whatever reason, we grieve it and we learn to cope with the new reality of loss. So I don't know that there is ever closure around these things, but what we can do is often find what we can cherish in the relationships we've had over the years and get on with life. And I found these days, and believe you me, it is pretty much a miracle that I'm still alive today. If it hadn't been for family supporting me, professionals getting me dry, and then finding help whenever I need it in a fellowship, I doubt that I would have survived. And I mean that seriously, it's just a fact of life. Without the help of other people, I would have perished on my own, because self-will and willpower could not stop me from drinking. So if I couldn't stop myself, how could family, who didn't understand quite what was going on for me, help me either? And it took professionals to dry me out for about 3 weeks, long enough to understand that there was help out there. Family and the professional said, go to AA, Alcoholics Anonymous. So I did, and because of that, even though it was a struggle and difficult and hard and horrible for quite a while, I managed to stay sober long enough to learn how to cope with life. I never speak on behalf of AA, can't, don't want to, simply because everybody in the fellowship of AA is unique. They have all their different outlooks, they are all on their own path, and they can speak for themselves where they will. So nobody speaks for another person in fellowship. We speak for ourselves, our experience, strength and hope, and try and share it to help others recover from the malady, allergy or disease of alcoholism. And if your substance is different, there are many fellowships out there, many support groups, many ways to find how to get back to reality. And it's not easy. So I was asked to do these videos a few years ago, and I've been doing them ever since, trying to do them on a daily basis, because sobriety is one day long. So if I'm staying sober, share. And if I'm not sharing on a video, I get to a fellowship meeting, listen to other people sharing, and share myself when I feel it's right for me to do so, which is most often every day, because fellowship has become something more. It's become a community to which I belong, and although I can't speak for it, I can share about how it impacts on my life. And not to share about the fellowship of AA would be to hide or pretend that I'm sober just because I'm sober. Well, I'm not. It takes every person in fellowship who keeps on going back one day at a time to live life and reality and be in fellowship, not necessarily going every day, but as much as they feel is necessary to feel right with life, feel right with living reality, coping with it. And on a day like today, when I watched the people laying wreaths at the cenotaph, I do remember my dad, and I do look at everyone who is honouring those who have fallen and honouring those who are still alive, because part of it is raising money for charity to help people who are still with us and have had hard times, difficult times, and given more than probably they ever expected, but did it willingly. So I've got me poppies, and I've got me poppy band, and next week is Children in Need, and I'll give as much as I can, and still try and live, of course. But the point was, it's a very emotional time, because these days I have fantastic recollections of my dad. Those moments of clarity he had, there were quite a few, and he did love us, even though he didn't know how to show it. So yes, tears shed for times past. Look back, don't stare. Well, look back hard enough to see and learn and remember and cherish. Those are the things which were important to me today. And then to share a message of experience, strength and hope for anyone, anywhere, trying to keep sober and learn life one day at a time. And a lot of people I know in fellowship have had difficult times in the military and armed forces, doing their best with what they had and what they learned back then, and also helping people today who try cope with a drink rather than cope with a cup of tea or whatever it is. So how does AA work? Well, I share the AA preamble here and some of the readings and some of my thoughts of the day. So, Remembrance Sunday this year, bright sunshine in London, UK, and the Whitehall service in remembrance, a beautiful morning with people, and I could see on their faces what they are remembering. Those who have the depth feel it, those who are still young, experiencing what it means to be a part of something bigger than them. And thankfully a bit of laughter and joke, and I'm glad they don't know quite how it impacts on some people. Some, I hope, will never have those experiences, and that's not because just because that's me. I don't really want people to feel that damage, that hurt, as deeply as some do, but I can't make it so. I'd rather life was a bit frothy and wonderful, but you can't have the froth and wonderful without the other part, the sad and the difficult. So I'll share the AA preamble and then some of the daily reflection from AA, and then some of my thoughts for today as well. So I'm glad to be alive, to be around to watch it on the TV, even if I can't get there due to my own incapacities. So I'll start with the AA preamble after a quick slurp of coffee. The AA preamble. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. So it's simply sharing experience, strength and hope. And it's about how to recover from drinking incessantly and addictively all the time. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking, and that's it. A simple desire to stop drinking. There are no rules, laws or regulations to govern you in AA. A desire to stop drinking is enough to put your foot in the door and see what can happen. There are no dues or fees for AA membership, so if you haven't got any money, it doesn't matter. But we are self-supporting through our own contributions. So AA is self-supporting, meaning we contribute what we can, if we have any money, to cover the rent for meetings, tea, coffee, biscuits, literature, and a bit of admin cost on top. So we can be fairly efficient and self-supporting and run pretty well and be organised enough so we can keep in recovery. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organisation or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. So the fellowship is not allied to anything, and it has one primary purpose. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. But given the way the world is, and fellowship is worldwide and global, you will hear people from all backgrounds, people travelling the globe, not just going to AA meetings, but getting on with their lives and having the benefit of AA meetings wherever they go. So we're very lucky here in London, UK. We have 700 meetings of AA a week. So 700, I'd have to go twice a day for a year to probably get round them all. And that's just AA, the fellowship. So there are even more when you take account of any substance or any behaviour you can possibly think of. There will be a fellowship out there somewhere operating to help people get back to clear living, clear of addictive behaviour or substances. Everyone has a point of view, everybody has beliefs, everybody has courses they may belong to, sects, whatever, politics, organisations. So you will hear life stories constantly about what is working and what is not working on a daily basis in meetings of fellowship. It's not, we don't sit there and judge, hopefully, not too much, and we don't sit there thinking, well, they're mad as a hatter, although sometimes we do think that, because we're human. But being human, we try accept people and life on life's terms, and try not to criticise them. We're just there to share our experience, strength and hope of living life today. And part of that, and part of the backup, the toolkit of AA is a 12-step toolkit to keep well. And the way to keep well is to keep on learning life without a drink inside us in Alcoholics Anonymous. And this month's one is all about sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. And what I've learned in recovery is I'm thinking all the time, and there's an inner voice which says, oh no, this is going badly, or oh yes, this is wonderful. So there is a voice inside us, an inner voice, and it's meditating and reflecting on what is going on around us all the time, and it's talking to us all the time. And sometimes it's one voice saying, is it all right for you, Don? Or there's a committee in my head saying, oh my God, what a mess this is. So 1,000 voices seem to go off at once. But prayer meditation is about focusing on what will keep me sober, looking at the big picture and seeing how I fit in, rather than focusing on my woes or my problems or my worries or just me and my selfishness or self-will or bondage of self, and just saying what's in it for me, which is very selfish, rather than to be included, a part of, how to love people and be loved back. So the prayer and meditation, whether you believe in God or not, whether you're agnostic, atheist or believer, and we can be any of those things in our lives, depending on our life experience and our understandings and beliefs. Prayer and meditation will go on all the time, either as a focus or 1,000 voices which seem to go off in our heads, and we run in different directions all at once, never sure of where to go or what to do. And that is where the danger of going back to drinking can be. So meditation, reflection, prayer, whatever works for you, to focus on, I am sober today, this is where I start, how am I feeling, why, and what can I do? Well, I feel okay just now. An hour ago I felt awful, so I couldn't go out and participate and see and be a part of what was going on in Whitehall. And I accept that. So disappointment to an extent, but also a realisation that that is not of primary importance. I have to keep well and look after myself, and the reason why I have difficulties sometimes is type 1 diabetes, sugar levels going a bit haywire, or just feeling chronic fatigue, which happens quite frequently given where I've been and what I've done in my life. But I'm grateful to be able to say, no, I need to stay in and reflect. So I've done some reflections. But I'll start with the AA daily reflection for today. Looking outward, and this is the key for me, looking outwards and not being stuck in the bondage of self. We ask especially for freedom from self-will, and are careful to make no requests for ourselves only. We may ask for ourselves, however, if others will be helped. We are careful never to pray for our own selfish ends, which sounds pretty good to me. It means life is not all about me, it's about where I fit in, where I can be a part of, what freedoms I have in terms of choice based on reality. it goes on to say, as an active alcoholic, I allowed selfishness to run rampant in my life. Now, we don't know that we're being selfish until we know what selfish is. I was so attached to my drinking and other selfish habits that people and moral principles came second. And I guess that's true, because when your best friend is a drink or a substance or a behaviour, you know, we're not exactly on an even keel. We're not balanced. Now, when I pray for the good of others rather than my own selfish ends, I practice a discipline of letting go of selfish attachments, caring for my fellows, and preparing for the day when I will be required to let go of all earthly attachments. In other words, when we let go and we expire. So what is it that, you see, I'm not a very good scholar when it comes to religion, but what was it? It's easier for a man on a camel, a rich man on a camel, to get through the eye of the needle than it is for whatever to get into heaven. The point being that if you are even and balanced with the world and see your part in it, which is to be a part of, not necessarily to control it or to control others, and to be less selfish and more inclusive and part of a community, big or small, life is probably going to be better, because we are, you know, we're not trying to rule other people. I guess some people get a kick out of that, but that's not where I am. I like to be a part of something, how to love people, be loved back, and useful in whatever capacity is open to me. So, my thoughts this morning, quite a lot actually. A phrase often said in recovery: look back and don't stare. Look back and learn is what is right for me. And sometimes a good hard look to see what happened, and then understand why it happened. How I was impacted by the past, early life, choices based on fear, putting on a brave face and a stiff upper lip, which meant that I was fearful, hid from the choices open to me, and went for what I thought was the best choice based on my limited outlook. Today, decisions and choices based on courage, faith and confidence. Courage, faith and confidence, a spiritual path for me, in reality. So spiritual is living reality, the ability to cope with now. Less fear and superstition, letting go and letting good into my life today. So letting go of my old attitudes, beliefs and actions based on self-will run riot, self-obsession and the bondage of self, I hope, and more about being included, a part of. And I had a lovely afternoon yesterday with a friend of mine. It's just good to be in company where you can just be yourself. Just be yourself and know it's okay. And then see them go and do what they're going to do for the rest of the day. It's just brilliant. So, another thought: freedom from self-will, leading to open, honest and willing to live life on life's terms. Living reality, gaining wisdom and experience to develop my outlook or your outlook. Freedom from the bondage of self, to more informed choices today, a day at a time. From excluded and isolated to be included and involved, a part of life again. We make progress and learn how to cope, and often thrive in the moment of now, which is true. So from feeling a bit disappointed and not going out and being a part of, to I feel okay right now because I've done what I can do. And Remembrance Day and Veterans Weekend. If we had known more, and this is a poem: old soldiers never die, they simply fade away. That's what they used to sing along the roads last spring. That's what they used to say before the push began. That's where they are today, knocked over to a man. Siegfried Sassoon. Today we know more. My dad never knew what ailed him from his experiences in war, never learning how to cope with life again. And I remember that. But we didn't know what it was at the time, and we didn't know why he drank so much, and why the habit got him. That's life. But you know what? He gave it up in the end. Last few days, last few weeks, gave up drink, gave up pretty much all the addictions he had, and said, when I asked him why have you stopped smoking, drinking and all the rest of it, and he said, well, now I know when the end is, there's nothing to fear. But he was remorseful about a lot of things that had happened, and how he had not been able to cherish my mother as much as he had wished. It was only in those last vulnerable days where he found the strength to tell the truth about how much he cherished her and loved her. And that's it for today. I did love my dad. He was not very easy to love. And the torture of seeing him die so horribly was, he did fade away. But these days, when people come back from war, we know more about how to help, and also how to help people who haven't been able to cope with reality following disastrous times, where seeking oblivion in drink has led to addiction. And that was me as well, for my post-traumatic distress, PTSD. I don't know if it is post-traumatic stress disorder. It's more likely post-traumatic distress disorder. Enough stress in life is okay, but when it becomes distressing and persistent, that's when it's disorder. And when it's persistent, it won't go away, and we relive events over and over again, which just won't go away. Hard life and grieving over loss and shock of what we had to do to survive. Those are not easy times. So I'm glad I got to fellowship, the fellowship of AA. It gave me back my sanity, people in it, and it was a power greater than me. I couldn't do it on my own. People around me who loved me but didn't know what addiction was, just wished they could do more. They couldn't, because they didn't know how. So I was glad to get to a fellowship where people knew how to keep sober one day at a time, which is expression of life today, past, present, and living and coping with reality, letting it out, sorting it out, to an extent reliving it, so we can understand all those experiences and the feelings that go with it. So, fellowship, and emotional, knowing what our feelings are, getting rid of the mountain of feelings which got in the way and made us drink. Emotional and spiritual. As for many, the understanding is spiritual is living and coping with reality. After all, if anything's happening spiritual, it's happening now. The quality of the spiritual experience, far better sober for me. But, drink is okay for some people, and they're alright with it. My drinking days are done, I hope. But I can just do it for today, and that'll be enough for today. The Serenity Prayer, which helps me in any moment understand what I can and cannot do, and keep on learning the wisdom of what I can and cannot do, is to God, or to whatever you believe in. It doesn't matter whether you're agnostic, atheist, or believer. Whatever you believe, the Serenity Prayer can work for you in good conscience or to God. As long as you realise you're not God, that's all it is, really. So to God and in good conscience, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. For me, in the imperfectly perfect moment of now, and just for today.